Mark, you've gone gigantic, and I've become a small child, and we'll find out why in a few seconds, because they're a very super mega awesome guest. I'm on 99 lives, but this guy, he's been up to at least 100 lives, and he's mucked up the counter on all his video games. Don't ask me to fix him. We'll find out who this guy is. He's jumped through the top of the screen and he's come up through the bottom with extra power-ups. It's Epic Badger.
I love that Capcom-inspired background music. So good. I imagine myself punching a car, trying to get it down before the 30-second limit.
Yeah, there's nothing like punching up an old car. It's good for your knuckles.
Yeah. And the only reason I have 100 lives is, you know, I'm the big Galoob person, so of course I have a Game Genie.
Ah, nice. I forgot they made that. I only ever had the action replay. Like, I forget who makes that, but I've got one of them from a Mega Drive somewhere.
Game Genie, that was a mythical piece of hardware when I was a youngster. At first, I only saw the pictures and the articles in the magazines until I finally got to borrow one off my friend, and it just blew my mind. Cheating. I was just cheating like a mad yoke altogether.
My thing was the X rental one, like, because I never saw it like in shops or anything. But anyhow, do you want to, Badger? Do you want to tell us the topic, what we're talking about today?
I mean, if you look at the background, we're talking not just video games, but we're talking about adapting those games into lesser mediums. No, I'm joking. We're the generation that, like, video games are just one segment of all the things we enjoy, like music, television, all that. But, you know, it's also it's special for us with video games. You know, we put in so many hours into these things that you feel more of a connection sometimes to certain games than you do the film franchises, because you've spent 60 hours on a single game, and then you get to game 2, game 3, and you've spent 200 hours in a universe. You know, video games are just
100 hours and more like 500.
But yeah, we're talking video game film and related properties like television and, you know, other adaptations. And this is freeform, so there's no starting point. We're it's like Fortnite. We're jumping out of a plane and landing, and everything's collapsing in on us. And
I can kill you and steal your powers at any time.
Yeah, I'm not going to carry. No, Boba's going to carry the team. I'm going to go out in like the first 3 minutes.
I actually have a question. I have a question to kind of jump off here. Do either of you know, because I don't know, and I've only thought of it just now, what is the first video game to be adapted into a movie?
Oh, that's tricky. Like proper film, I might have to Google that. I don't know chronologically what I watched at the cinema and all that. And like technically the first things would be animations, because there's loads of those. There was loads of stuff in Japan and all sorts. And I mean, in the 80s, there was a Mario animated film or OVA, but live action. I'm going to type it in right now because I'm really curious. First ever live action video game film.
Well,
saying Super Mario Brothers, which I did see in the cinema in 1993. I don't know if that's accurate, but as far as being the 90s, I don't remember anything specific in the 80s, but it would usually be animations, because we're thinking more of like live action on Hollywood, you know, bigger budget than that.
It was a big one, a big disappointment for a lot of people as well. That Super Mario.
I only saw it, as I told Mark before, because some other kid's mum was like, I mean, kids I've known for years and years before we even went to school. We used to like flatmate together when we were like really young. So I've been to video game arcades and stuff, but we went, I think it was someone's birthday or outing, and their family was going, and I got invited along. I didn't really went to the cinema as a kid because we didn't have a lot of money. We might go once or twice a year, but got to go. That's the only reason I got to see Super Mario at the cinema. I'd never even played Super Mario. I'd seen the ads on TV for Nintendo, but I didn't even really know what Super Mario was when I saw the film.
The funny thing I think about when I think of the Super Mario Brother movie is we're still making the same mistakes today of taking a property, ignoring basically everything about it, and just slapping a name on a generic film. Because I'm thinking Monster Hunter from 2-3 years ago. I forget when it came out because it was awful, but it had nothing to do with the video game itself whatsoever. And Mario, there's like an illusion, or not an illusion. They allude to like being in the sewers once or twice, and that's like it. It's like with video game movies, you can go several different ways. Like you can ignore the lore. Like Mario today has so much lore behind it. But
it's got multiple universes pretty much, like all different continuities, like Sonic and Donkey Kong and all that.
But when you watch a Mario movie, what are you thinking is going to be the minimum? And the reason animation works for Mario is because it's a physics-based game. It's a platformer. I want to see Mario jump. I want to see him jump over things and jump on Yoshi's and let Yoshi drop into a chasm because he's a jerk. Like, I want to see him defy gravity. So if you don't have Daisy, if you don't have the 25 Toads and all the other ancillary characters, that's fine. Just give me some platforming in a Mario movie. And that's where, animation works for Mario. But like there's like a minimum requirement you got to meet. And with like Monster Hunter, hunt the monsters, like actually let them equip gear and go on raids to like try to take monsters out and get their equipment. Like we're still making those mistakes today because you're giving properties to people who probably didn't play the game.
Yep.
And if you don't play the game, that's fine. Go watch YouTube for 5 hours and do your research.
Yes.
Yeah, they're not doing research as lazy, not learning anything.
Yeah, they just, but it's exactly as you say, Jesse. And I think there's this, there can be this almost battle between producing something that fans of the game property will still like while trying to appeal to the mass audience. And with some game properties, it's kind of like impossible to do it because some video games just don't really have stories that are easily adaptable to the screen in any form because they're just crazy concepts that only really work within the context of a video game. But then when you add to that mix some guy in a suit who has no interest in learning the reason why the game is popular in the first place, and all they're looking for is, a quick buck, we do get stuff like that Super Mario's Brother movie and Monster Hunter, and there's probably numerous examples we're going to cite throughout this conversation. But I think that's it. You've got your these execs with a lack of knowledge but a desire to make money quickly, and we have a recipe for disaster.
And and some things shouldn't be adapted. Don't give a man in a suit any Hideo Kojima property to make into a film. Just don't. He has it covered in the game is his movie. Like you think of Death Stranding or something, it's like he doesn't need Hollywood. He's got it covered.
Like Metal Gear, you don't need to make a movie of that because there already are pretty much movies when you play them.
Yeah. Well, yeah, like Metal Gear 5, The Phantom Pain. By the time you get through the fully rendered cutscenes, the in-game cutscenes, and then all the dialogue and that happens during gameplay, you're looking at something in terms of watch hours more than a full series, a full season of a show.
Dialogue. There's more dialogue than gameplay in most of those games.
But you could go and do a movie based on Metal Gear or Metal Gear Solid, because they're early enough in the games that the lore hasn't gone super crazy yet. I can imagine you could do a good Metal Gear game, just drop him on the island, let him find his boss or, his ex-boss and deal with it. You can keep it simple like that.
As long as he doesn't feel asleep, then he'll be fine.
But then you have, I think I'll jump into it early. just because
Yeah,
it's this sort of Damocles sitting over my head. Uli Boll sucks.
it
And
does.
I think he really hurt the chances to make video game movies in the 2000s, early 2000s, because he was one of those people who figured, I can't come up with my own ideas. Take a video game, do a simple screen adaptation, make sure it gets no money. And with back-to-back failures like House of the Dead, Blood Rain, what was the other one? Alone in the Dark. They did poorly. I think Alone in the Dark did okay. I can't remember back then, but like they weren't big blockbusters. But a lot of them stunk.
No one wanted those IPs. That's why they would get them cheap.
Yeah. But because they stunk so bad, like it created this like miasma that just sat around video games where Hollywood was like, I don't want to touch that because just look, here's like recent examples. And not to say he was the only one who ruined video game movies. I mean, we've got images of Prince of Persia down there. But it doesn't help when you start you start throwing this muck of all these bad games, and Hollywood just sees all these recent ones that are doing so poorly. They're not going to invest money to make them good or to give scripts to good directors. It muddies the water for everyone when you have someone who just uses video games as like a quick cash cow.
Yeah, for sure.
I just want to get him out of the way, so it's like now we can talk about fun stuff.
I learned another little interesting thing about him last year. Funnily enough, I was listening to a wrestling podcast. Well, a podcast talking about wrestling. It wasn't actually a wrestling podcast. It was just that it has different topics every week, and that was the latest topic. I heard lots about him years ago. I used to read video game magazines, and there were big columns, and the editor would go on about how much he hates the bloody U-Ball films and tell you how bloody awful they are. So for years I'd hear about this stuff. So I didn't hear nothing for a long time. Don't pay attention to any of the nonsense he spouts online. Apparently he's a complete lunatic online, going on about all sorts of weird xenophobic stuff and ranting for hours. But I heard another story about him. I knew from years ago this thing where he's got the boxing gloves. He challenged journalists, as in like film journalists, to come and like box him, as in like kind of like the skinny looking dudes like me. He's like, oh, I want to box you, because he was like semi amateur boxer, and expecting them all to be like skinny little nerds. But at a screening for some film, he ran into a dude named Sean Baby, who's not skinny and small. He's like massive big guy. And he's also a proper film critic as well as like a comedy writer and comedian sort of person. And he went up to and challenged him and said, hey, I'll fight you. And you boys like, no, I don't want to fight you. Because the guy was like, what, nearly 300 pounds at the time.
Oh,
Crazy. Do you have like do you have a favorite video game movie, Jesse?
There's a lot of good ones. I definitely think television has done it better for me. Because like if you had asked me like an adaptation, I'm gonna say Arcane. And yes, I recognize for anyone who goes into the chat later, like it's not really like it's only loosely based on a property. It hasn't, it's not tied to a story from the game. It's like, but it's so good. But I have a list pulled up because there's so many and I keep forgetting them half the time.
So what is Arcane? I never heard of that. I just Googled it, saying it's from League of Legends.
It's League of Legends, which is a MOBA, which is a type of game where you've got lanes and you've got hero characters and you got to push lanes to try to take out their towers, and none of that is relevant. You don't have to know anything about a MOBA or that style of game. It's a complete interesting story set in a mythical world, and it's super fun.
In the voice cast, it's also got that Ala Purnell who was in the Fallout,
and it has really good drama. Like you feel gut wrench when you have to watch two sisters basically tear each other apart, and it's like this is some deep stuff.
I'm gonna check that out because I never heard of it.
But like I'm thinking,
Jesse, though, were you, when you went to watch that, were you looking to watch something that was connected to League of Legends, or were you just giving it a chance? based
I
on
was
its own
I was
merit.
curious because League of Legends, there's no story. Like if you dive into, there are named characters in the game, and I'm sure there's background lore that's been written about them. I don't know any of that. I just wanted to see like how are they going to make a MOBA style show, and I was glad to see that they didn't. They took their characters and just made a completely original story, with the settings that they have in their background. So it's kind of cheating. It's not really a video game movie based on like how a video game plays, but it was just nice to see them do something different with it. But I'm just looking like, and of course everyone's tastes are going to be different. But like, for example, I say recently, but like I really like the Tomb Raider movie with Alicia Vikander. I agree. Yeah, I agree. It wasn't a great film, but I don't think
the production, like it looked nice, and she was fine as the character, but just the story needed work. It had potential. I just thought if they worked a bit better on the story.
They didn't need, and there
was a mishmash of the modern games, but it didn't really do them properly.
Yeah, and of course there's going to be spoilers here because
if they'd done a second one, they might have probably got it right.
They teased it at the end. At the end, she goes back to Britain and she's in London, and she gets her guns, and it's like. They did sidetrack her about halfway through the film with all these other characters, which I think was a big mistake on their part.
It felt more like an Uncharted movie to me than a Tomb Raider movie. Is kind of my thing with it.
Yeah, but the ending with the fact that she gets her guns and she's gotten all her family issues out of the way, it's like I would have liked to have seen a sequel because I feel like that would have been. And with the Tomb Raider,
if they made it now, I'll watch it. Yeah.
And there was a lot of complaints from older people, older gamers about. Well, this isn't my Lara Croft. Right. Your Lara Croft back from 80s, 90s. Well, you had her, and then you grew up and said video games are for kids, and you stopped buying those games, and their quality also went down, and the property sat fallow for a long time.
And then Crystal Dynamics came along and reinvented it. And
like you older guys, you gave up on your Lara. This new Lara broke records, like that new, the remake for Tomb Raider. Geez, I think it was like 3 million copies in like 3 weeks or something. It was big numbers. It made tons of money. It, in perspective compared to old Tomb Raider, it did really, really well, and it got a whole new audience, a younger audience. So of course they're going to make a new Tomb Raider movie based on the new Tomb Raider. They're not going to do the old Tomb Raider because you older folks kind of abandoned her and left her.
And we had 2 movies already with Angelina Jolie. And those new games were, but they've been a while now, but, they were fantastic. They were a really good reinvention of the character and the brand and everything.
Yeah. So it's like I think some of the criticism for the newer Tomb Raider movie was just people complaining. It's not, it's not like it was back in the day. It's like, I don't care. Like I kind of like the new younger Lara who's just getting her feet wet, trying to.
I just wanted a better story, a better overall film. Like as a film, like as a Tomb Raider character and the setting, I was fine with all the production background, all that. No issue with any of that, and I didn't care about the setting or the era. Just if it was a better quality overall film was like my sort of issue.
But like recently, we've been in a really golden time because, like, if we're talking adaptations, like Fallout has been so much fun.
Yeah, that was excellent. I was surprised that was actually good. I'm like, they made something good.
Fallout, and then The Last of Us. Like, if that wasn't heart-wrenching enough in the game, and now that people fell in love with the show, and it's like you don't have to actually play the game to love the story that they write for these, and that's why The Last of Us, it's a take all the background away, all the plague stuff and everything. It's about a guy who loses his daughter and adopts another daughter, and their relationship. And it's simple enough that people can latch onto it. Everything else is just fluff.
Yeah, I haven't watched that show because I haven't got around to playing the games. I started them like whenever the hell the first one came out, and then I moved into state, and all my stuff was packed away for a couple of years, so that's why I didn't get to play it.
It's the that's the special ingredient, though, isn't it, guys? Because you have a story there that is simple enough and clear enough to be adapted, and you could have made that. You can do it as a TV show, you can do it as a movie. It's just a very easily, and I've never even played the game. I'm like aware of it and I know what it's about and I know how it plays. But I didn't need any game connection there to enjoy that show. And like that's really one of those type of unicorn situations where these suits who don't fully understand what they have, this is what they're looking for, even though a lot of the time they don't realize this is what they're looking for. It's that type of simplicity of having a property that's easily moved from one medium to the other.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, story matters. Like story matters. If you've got a decent story and decent like pathos and whatever you're adapting it into, it can work in it.
And going back to, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, you go. No.
Going back to what I said about Mario earlier, at the base minimum, you want to see Mario jump. So maybe
he does have those boats in the corner.
So maybe live action isn't the best thing for him, but I just had a thought. Now I'm losing it. I remember. So like, if certain things frustrate me, like Hitman. You didn't have to go into lore or anything with Hitman. It's a dude who goes around, chokes people out, puts on their uniform as silly as they look, and just does his job. And it's like, have fun. People are having fun with this game. There's a subcontext where if you sit down and play it, or you talk to people who played it, they're gonna be like, oh, the part I love the most is just putting on the silly disguises and going around with weird scenarios.
There's some of that Metal Gear aspect where it just has all this open kind of ways of achieving missions and that.
Yeah. The other one was the recent Borderlands movie.
I haven't seen that.
Oh, it's so bad.
I have not seen it, but I have not.
I think Kate Blanchett or someone's in that. She was like Australian. Usually decent stuff, but not that.
Now, for full transparency, I have not seen it either. I've seen clips of it and it looks awful, and I've heard reviews. But the thing that keeps coming up in reviews is they're trying so hard to follow a story, and it's like, don't do that with Borderlands. So for some context for people who don't know, Borderlands first-person shooter, but YouTube started in 2005. Borderlands was like 2010, something like that.
I ordered the first game and played a little bit, and I didn't know it was meant to be multiplayer when I bought it. So when I kept dying over and over again, I finally figured out, it's meant to be bloody multiplayer.
The story doesn't exist. Like, there is a story. Find a MacGuffin. That's not important. Borderlands is internet humor condensed. It is the Deadpool of its time. Let's just take every stupid joke we can from the internet and throw it in. And they ramp it up in Borderlands 2. Only now they have more internet humor to throw in. It's like, I don't know how you can do a Borderlands today. Like, it has to be so referential to the current humor of the time, the meta of the time, or whatever you want to call it. And it's like, I don't think that works well for film.
No.
Like playing Borderlands and Borderlands 2, it's a time capsule. Everything is a reference, and you can go and play the game and just have fun with it, but it's just like, to really experience the game and get why people loved it, you kind of have to have lived in that time and understood the references and why we thought it was funny. Because I'll be honest, some of it's not funny anymore. It's just kind of like, wow, this is very juvenile.
Gonna be like dated and that as well.
It's a real grind game as well, Borderlands.
Yeah.
Like it's going to eat up a lot of your time because it's all about the grind and the loot and the exploration and stuff. And it's a totally different type of immersion as opposed to watching like an hour and a half long movie that's on a very set linear story. It's just, it's not really what I would imagine Borderlands to be. And maybe this kind of raises a question of, like, did anybody actually really want a Borderlands movie? Was anybody asking for one, and
I got bored
shut
of
it
the
in when it
game,
means
so I didn't
something.
want a movie. And when the game was
Yeah.
first out, the people that loved it and people that didn't like it would call it Boredom Lands.
Nice.
Yeah, I can't. And as we're talking about Borderlands, I'm looking at your background and I see Minecraft tucked in the corner down there, and I think it's going to have the same problem. It's actually, I think
Well,
it's going to have
created stories. You're telling your own, like a true video game. You're just whatever you're doing is the
Yeah.
story. So
But looking at the trailer, I can tell they're trying to. It's going to be a lot of referential humor, but which audience is it geared for? And
yeah,
to
if
me,
it was
it felt
like
like
the Lego movie, it'd be all right. But it probably
Yeah.
won't be. I bet it will just be either be really kiddie for kids and might be fine, or if
it's
they
a
go for
lot
the
of
all ages, I think it'll fall flat.
the trailer was the jokes were just rapid fire and a lot of screaming, which is something like my 5-year-old, 6-year-old nephew on his tablet.
Yeah.
That's the type of stuff he watches on YouTube, where it's like 30 seconds long and it's a stupid joke and a lot of screaming in the background. And I'm like, oh, this is for this movie's going to be for the little kids.
But for 90 minutes for their
But for
watch
those
it.
of us who played Minecraft back in like 2009, and this is where I get the Lord of the Rings, like I was there 3,000 years ago. Like, oh, boy,
Yeah, like
Minecraft
person that built
2009. It's like
the
you're
person
not
that
going
built
to
like a replica Starship Enterprise inside Minecraft. The first person, like, I don't think they're sitting around watching that movie when it comes out.
but like a lot of us older, and Minecraft is what helped with. If we're talking about YouTube, Minecraft is kind of the catalyst for like modern Let's Plays and YouTube personalities. In that, like everyone,
it was just an indie game when it wasn't actually a commercial. It was like free at first. It wasn't even a commercial game to start with.
and everyone started with it and built followings with it and personality with it, and then they went on, did other games and became what we would consider like modern YouTubers. It really drove YouTube in like the 2009, around the 2010 era. 2010 was kind of a year in which you were getting Machinima, you were getting all these YouTubers who were like starting to bigger names. Like I call them the LA group. So you have like the Game Grumps, you have Jesse Cox, you have Total Biscuit. People who, if you grew up in my time, you'd be like, you probably have heard of them or have seen like clips of stuff they've done. But Minecraft was a big driver of that. And I feel like they're not going to touch on any of that history. They're just going to, they're looking at what the kids are doing today and being like, let's make a whole 90-minute movie about that.
It's become already a generational game because I think the early adopters would have mostly been adults because you had to be a PC person and you were playing something to know it even exists. It was like not commercial. It was almost like a free demo really. And then they built it. And then like more than 10 years later, I'm in the supermarket. I'm like, what's all this Minecraft crap everywhere? Does that still exist? What is it? I had no idea. And all these young kids, a whole different audiences, obviously different ages of people who played it. But it's become generational where entirely different people have played it who, might not have been born when it came out.
In the complete opposite vein, in terms of, I don't think it's going to be good, and then it is good, Sonic has been crushing it.
The Sonic 3 I watched the other night, it was hilarious. Like I was like, my guts were hurting from laughing at all the gags in it. They had like the best version of Jim Carrey that I couldn't stand him in the first movie. It's too off-putting him doing all this wacky stuff, trying to be this cartoonish character. But in the third movie, he's gained weight. He's more like the video game Robotnik, and he just goes off the wall. It's like his Riddler from the Batman Schumacher turned up to 11, but in a way that's actually funny and good.
Sonic, I think, is still it's an evergreen brand or an everblue brand, I guess, more accurately.
Some of the best adaptations, and like so many animated shows now over the years.
But I was just about to say it's the type of thing that's very easily adaptable into a nice animated cartoon for kids as well. He's a very easily marketable character for kids, Sonic and his friends and his enemies. It's a kind of a gold mine. I'm surprised they didn't cash in on 10 or 15 years ago. I'm surprised it took them so long.
He had an animated film in the 90s. Remember that one-off? It was like an OAV from Japan that got translated.
I remember that. Yeah,
but that was a lot. But that was like think late 90s after we had Saturday AM and all that in the early 90s. And then fast forward, we had Sonic X, which was like a typical anime and okay, but average.
Oh, yeah.
Sonic Boom was full of like heaps of references and jokes and gags, and the plot, virtually nothing ever happened in the plot. It was just all jokes, but quite funny. And then he's got another modern show now on Netflix. He's got another one. I didn't even realize it was out until I was looking up the other night.
And I couldn't imagine them trying to do a Sonic movie before.
And there's a Knuckles spin-off as well, that TV show.
But like before the, now that we have good animation in terms of like 3D animation, I think this is the golden time for video games for a lot of them. Some should still be live action, like The Last of Us, Fallout. Those are perfect live action. But if you want to do,
I still wish they'd made Sonic all animate, like he's animated in films, but the humans are humans, like Who Framed Roger Rabbit. I still wish they'd just done all animation, like the Mario movie. They don't need humans in there.
Yeah, but I do think we're in a great time where the technology has made it to where like for example, I enjoyed Detective Pikachu. I can see down there.
That was great. Me and my missus went to the cinema. We both like really enjoyed that. And I as soon as I finished watching that, I went, I'm definitely getting that on Blu-ray. Watching it at home.
But you have to put in the work, because like I remember those live action, like the Chipmunk movies and the Smurf movies, like those were dreadful. But like you put in the work and the research and the money, like the Sonic movie, the Pikachu movie, like you can mix the two mediums together. Yeah, or you could go the Mario route and go completely digital, and that also is fine because it works in the Mario world.
I thought the Pikachu movie worked on several levels. It was a decent film and story for like all ages, like a Toy Story sort of thing, so a casual audience can enjoy it. It was packed with so many references to Pokemon stuff in the backgrounds and things, and not all gags, but just references, like visual stuff in there to like train spotting sort of thing. And that, like the Minecraft, I think that's also generational, where, I mean, you've got probably 2 or 3 generations now that have grown up with Pokemon stuff, because it's been around for like, since the late 90s. Yeah. So it works for young kids and for adults, and, who've probably grown up. Like I played Pokemon Red around 1999, and I bought a Game Boy Color. It was purple. I actually bought it to play that game.
And I think they do it right in, you have an original story, you keep it fairly simple, and then you have the references in the background for people who have been playing it a long time.
That's why part of why that was successful is Nintendo handed it off to another company and said, you go and do whatever you want. And most of the people were completely surprised by how good it turned out to be. But they had the trust to give it to another company and not be all handsy puppet masters mucking it up.
Yeah. So if
what about some video game movies that almost were, but then just got snuffed at the last second? Like you're a Halo fan, aren't you, Jesse? We almost had a Halo movie. When was that? 2009, 2010, but it ended up becoming District 9. Is that the movie?
Yeah. It makes sense. Like it looks like New Mombasa when you look at, because it took place in District 9 was South Africa. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
You even see the warthogs and everything in the background in a few scenes, and we almost.
I remember all those announcements now, because at one time it was going to be like Peter Jackson directing one and all sorts of stuff.
Yeah, and then they made the show. But the show is set in an alternate universe where things don't quite line up the same, and Halo fans are just like,
why? It's weird. My mum's watched that show, and she's like, have you watched this Halo show? I'm like, no, I've heard it's rubbish. I don't want to watch it.
Well, and I don't need it because I have like Halo 1, 2, 3, Reach, ODST. Sometimes I don't need a movie of something. I have enough of the property.
I think a movie kind of defeats the point of a Halo, because you've got this, they're like clones. He's like a clone Captain America super soldier sort of dude, and you don't see his face on purpose because he's just meant to be the avatar of the gamer, and that's not really meant to be as much of a personality.
He responds. That's all he does. Is someone's like, Chief, do this.
It's like Link and Zelda. Okay. He's just meant to be the character's avatar. They purposely leave him a blank slate, so you're projecting onto him whatever you want to, and as you play the game.
Yeah.
It'd be interesting though to see what could have been spun out, because they obviously at one point were ready to put a significant budget behind it before they actually pull the plug. So I wonder, maybe there's a an alternate timeline out there in the multiverse
Yeah.
where we would have
Yeah.
gotten to see how that Halo movie turned out.
Yeah, it was
Another one I was kind of
different.
thinking of. I know we got a lot of Resident Evil movies which are pretty bad, but we almost got a George Romero directed Resident Evil movie back in the year like '99, but it just so close. It was not to be.
I just feel like there's this timid, like, studios are just like, I want you to do this because I feel like it's gonna make money, but you're doing things that I don't like and I want to tweak these, and it's like, you know, and maybe okay, now we'll move you out of the way and get someone else in, and it's like certain things work for a reason, and I don't want to watch Hitman and watch a super serious assassin movie. There's a million of those out there. You know, the movie better end with him in a chicken suit pushing someone off a cliff.
Yeah, can we get Sonic, but make him orange and just like make him a bit more Rastafarian, and he's from an alien planet?
Is that Knuckles?
It's Poochie.
Oh,
I'm describing Poochie for the Simpsons.
oh, I'm just looking at your background there, and I see a few things that stand out to me. So, like, for example, God of War is coming. That's going to be an
I
Amazon.
didn't know about that. I hadn't heard of that.
And I'm
That's
so
another
happy.
one that's already a movie. So many bloody cutscenes in those games.
Well, and it's another thing where it doesn't need a show, but I think it could work in the vein of Fallout if you
Yeah,
keep
if it was
it
like a
simple
TV
enough.
show or the movie, it would be better.
Because what's the story? It's a dad dealing with the loss of his wife and a
It'll
child
definitely
who
be
doesn't know how to
post-modern,
raise.
sensitive new age God of War. It won't be original hardcore accidentally murdered my family in the opening cutscene God of War. It won't
No.
be going that version.
Because in the game he deals with that legacy. He has, you know, he keeps it from his son. Like, there's a point in they go to hell, HEL, in Scandinavian lore,
As they do in each game.
and you see, because when you're there, apparently you can see like ghost images of things that's happened in your past, and his son saw him just like wrecking Zeus. And he's like, okay, I have to tell you some things. And it's like
I
he
used to
has
be basically the Incredible Hulk.
Yeah. And he keeps his blades buried because he's like, I'm trying to step away from that past. I was a nut job who was just slaughtering everyone. And eventually when his son gets threatened, he's like, I got to go get my blades. I'm going to have to be the God of War for a little bit. And it's a great part of the game where it's like, oh, yes, the old Kratos is slowly coming back, but also he's still a dad. And also he's trying to do better. And so I think there's a lot of potential there for a good story, just like with The Last of Us, where you don't need to know so much of the background. Just have a good father-son story.
The first games are really like Devil May Cry. It's all about the action. The story's in there, but it's just to present the game and make it more fancy because it was a Sony developed product, make it stand out and all these cool animations and lore and background stuff. But it's a hardcore action game. So, and then when they got to the modern ones, they went all the other way. They went, okay, now it's a story game that happens to where sometimes you press a button. It's like it's gone the other way, where the story is the primary thing more than actual anything you're doing in it.
Yeah, I am looking forward to the Mario movie. I thought was fine, you know, like 7, 8 out of 10. Like, it wasn't mind blowing, but it was fun to watch. But I think there's so much good potential there because Nintendo properties.
I like the Lego movie better.
Nintendo properties, the stories are fairly basic. You know, yes, there's a lot of Mario lore. You don't need to know
by design, though. They're meant to be simple and childlike. And,
But they introduced Donkey Kong and Diddy Kong in the film, so you can easily have a spin-off of the Donkey Kong franchise. You could easily do a Kirby. You could easily do... oh, shoot. What's the one? Kid Icarus. What's that one? Yeah, Kid Icarus.
He's called Pit.
Pit,
yeah,
Kid
Icarus.
Icarus. Like, you could do so many easy spin-offs, and it's all computers, so you don't need people.
Well, if they did, have you seen Wreck-It Ralph? Remember that guest starred King Koopa and Zangief Sonic in that scene where it was like group therapy. If you did like Wreck-It Ralph's or like the Smash Brothers, a movie, but it's Nintendo, but with Nintendo characters.
But that's what they could lead to. Is like they could do the Donkey Kong
or
spin-off.
Mario Kart the movie. I'd watch that. Let's make a racing movie.
like after they do Donkey Kong and Pit, and they do Metroid, and they do Legend of Zelda, which would be interesting what they do with that.
It doesn't talk, so how are you gonna do that one? He's just gonna like mime or something. He's like,
He's gonna have to tag along with Zelda, and she's gonna have to do like the heavy lifting, or he's gonna have a really annoying sidekick, and that I'm afraid of that.
oh, not Navi. Hey, listen. Hey, listen.
Or the Midna. What was Midna? Was the wolf, or she transformed into the wolf?
Oh yeah, and that one
And
that was
then-
on.
And then there was the sword that talked. He's gonna have a sidekick who's gonna do like the heavy lifting for the language.
Yeah.
So Zelda's gonna have to be there to fill in the time, but I don't know. Like, but what I'm bringing, the whole reason I'm mentioning is like you just mentioned the big word Smash Brothers. It's like you get 6 or 7 movies done, you can have your big cinematic brawler at the end.
That would excite me if they did it well.
Yeah, maybe there's a big, not their equivalent, I suppose, of the MCU, coming together for this big Smash Bros. Mega event.
Well, the Master Hand
would
is
be a dream
invading,
come
and
true.
we all got to work together.
Would be a big hit.
And then
I'll tell
Capcom
you
will be like, hey, can I get a couple movies in before you do the Smash Brother movie? Could we
No,
collaborate?
Capcom, stop making bad movies and bad games. You make very good games, but no, stop doing bad stuff.
Well, that reminds me, like, we haven't gotten any Mega Man. Like, we've gotten cartoons, we've gotten some animated stuff. But like, I think they could do a good Mega Man in the style of Mario with that digital world.
Yeah, easily.
Where is Mega Man at the moment in terms of, brand awareness with youngsters, do you reckon?
They went back to the
That
original
is,
ones again of all those like indie style ones that were digital and that, and like Mega Man 9 and 10 and all that. So you've gone from the NES
the way with
to Mega Man Battle Network. Now they've got all the way back to the beginning again.
With that recent Mario movie, like it actually was a hit with young people, but I think a lot of the reason for that is because there was plenty of current Mario out there that kids are already interested in.
Every generation has a
just
Mario
trying
game.
to think. I feel like with Mega Man, like I'm just trying to recall when was the last time I felt like Mega Man was like in focus for young people. I just don't feel
I think it's completely unknown to young people. It's only like hardcore gamers that really know it from pre-year 2000 that bother with it these days.
He's gonna have to be an ancillary character in a movie. Like he's how Donkey Kong was like a background character for Mario. He's gonna have to get introduced in one of these movies if Capcom ever allowed it, or he'd have to be introduced in Capcom's own little Wreck-It Ralph.
You'd have to be careful with some of the Mega. If you made it like solo Mega movie with side characters and other things, you have to be careful you don't get sued by whoever owns the copyrights for Astro Boy, because he's basically just a lift of a lot of Astro Boy and characters from that.
I think there's enough distance now where
it
would be hard to argue.
If they put too much in there, they could actually legitimately sue them.
Yeah, but he's going to have to be a background character in something, because I agree. What Mark just said. It's like he's not known to kids.
No, he's one of the most well-known video game icons ever. If you go like big icons like Sonic, Mario, and like Lara Croft and Mega Man and all that, but he's not known to younger people now. He's not known to people who are playing online battle royale games and Fortnite and all this.
Well, I don't think Capcom would want to spend the money on a full game. A full movie. I could see them licensing him out to Nintendo to be like, could you slap him in the game and just give us a little of the revenue and just let it go.
I want to ask Mark a question, because we haven't got to you yet for asking. Do you have a favorite or most enjoyable video game film from any like 90s, 2000 up to modern day, anything from any era?
Yeah, well, my absolute favorite, and it's not just my favorite like video game movie, it's probably like
it's Yui Bowl Marathon.
My second favorite animated movie of all time. It's the Street Fighter 2, the movie, the animated movie.
That 90s anime one.
It's like a perfect video game adaptation, I feel like.
Yeah, that was really cool.
They even, especially at the time it was made, like they took characters that essentially only had like a paragraph's worth of information and they managed to kind of flesh it out and make a coherent story out of it. So yeah, Street Fighter 2, the animated movie, is definitely one of my favorites. And of course, the three of us are no strangers to talking about Street Fighter. I'll throw it out there now as a cheap plug. We have joined forces before, and if anybody's interested, it's on Johnny's channel, our Street Fighter chat.
Yeah, I'll chuck in the show notes if you click on the description, the previous ones where we've talked about Street Fighter. Me and Mark talked about Street Fighter. Jesse's been on before, and we talked about We did several Street Fighter shows.
Yeah, we're knee deep in the Street Fighter content over here on this side of YouTube. But yeah, it's definitely one of my favorites in terms. Oh yeah, Guile. I always appreciate a character that can do a perfect headstand without using his arms to balance. So, but yeah, it's Street Fighter. It's we also did talk about the live action Street Fighter, which some people are not big fans of. I will be a fan of it just because it's ridiculous and cheesy.
I hated it back then, but I enjoy it now for its campy and
yes,
behind the scenes and all that.
I can totally understand how people at the time who were currently playing the game and really enthusiastic about the game, which is totally disgusted by what they
Can you
managed to
clarify
produce.
for younger viewers? You don't mean the most recent Street Fighter movie with Chun-Li. You mean
Oh no,
No,
Jean-Claude Van Damme, JCVD
Kylie
Street
Minogue.
Fighter, yes.
yeah, Van Damme and Kylie
and there
Minogue.
was at
Yes.
the time, like we'd had turbo / hyper fighting and all that, and new challenges which had like new characters, new roster. But then we had this movie, but we also had Street Fighter, the movie, the game of the movie. That was a game, and that bombed really. That was the first Street Fighter game that nobody wanted to play. People played it for like about a week, and they saw how rubbish it was, and went back to playing all the old Street Fighters.
Yeah, in terms of the video game movies,
It was
that
so
are
bad that
kind of
Capcom
bad,
remade it on PlayStation. It's different than the arcade game. They actually remade it themselves.
like there's a lot of bad ones out there. There's probably like I know we mentioned it at the beginning, but that Mario Brothers, the 93 one,
Bob
I
Hoskins.
wasn't expecting. I just wasn't expecting, to go to a Mario Brothers movie and get like Blade Runner or whatever it was. It's like
Yeah.
really like, heavy rain, smoky streets, running down dark
Well,
alleys. It's like, what am I watching? Is this
And
Mario?
the
He
guys
looks
that
really
worked on that
upset.
were influenced by Blade Runner and European like heavy metal and all that sort of thing. So it's so bizarre.
Yeah, it's like the darkest timeline for the character of Mario. But yeah, even as a kid, it never sat right with me. It didn't
You're
float
watching
my
that
boat.
and going,
in any
hang
way.
on, that's a bloke from Long Good Friday. I don't know that we should trust him.
I suppose the elephant in the room, though, we have to bring it up because he's sitting right here in the middle of our screen. Jake Gyllenhaal as the Prince of Persia, Johnny's
I got
favorite
excited
video
for
game
that because I
movie.
love those Prince of Persia Sands of Time trilogy, and they've mucked up anything they've done since then with them pretty much. But the cast was rubbish. But like the Swords and Sandals movie, how hard is that? It's like that's something Hollywood used to be able to do easily in like the 60s and 70s. I mean, obviously it's an Arabian Swords and Sandals, but why they couldn't have some Arab actors in there, and why they couldn't make it good instead of complete garbage.
It's one of those examples where it's kind of like what Jesse was saying earlier about you watch a Mario movie, you expect a bit of jumping and platforming. They try to do a little bit of that in the Prince of Persia movie, but it just comes across as really forced and unnatural and not fun or cool. It's not just
the actors. We were talking about this before we had started, but like I had to think for a while to remember Jake Gyllenhaal's name because I'm sorry to say he's kind of bland. And this movie was so bland. I was like trying to remember what happened in it. It just, it was so. And the unfortunate thing is like, I work in academia and I work with a lot of students from around the world, including a lot of Iranian students, and they have a rich culture, a rich history, and Persian history, because it touches East Asia, Southeast Asia, up into like the parts of Europe, Egypt. It's like there's so much you could grab, and they're doing that with modern Prince of Persia games. Some of the newer ones, they're adding in some of that spice. But it's like this was, white American actors portraying Persians, Iranians.
Yeah, I found it just ridiculous.
And the story was so boring. Like, how do you have a boring story about I'm supposed to die now? Hold on, I'm going to rewind 10 seconds and redo it again.
They'll find a way to make
No
it
good,
boring.
no good
Don't you worry
platforming.
about
The only
that.
solution is like just press the cheap menu to skip to the end credits and get the hell out of the cinema.
There was also I've actually seen something worse than the Prince of Persia movie, and that is
Oh, there's worse stuff out there.
the Princess
There's
of
that
Persia.
Pixel one, Adam Sandler.
Princess of Persia. It's a straight to DVD
What?
spin-off. It's
I would
awful.
like an asylum
Absolutely
type
awful.
release or something.
Yeah,
no.
really bad. Really bad. No budget, no fun.
So let me ask you that: what do you prefer? Because this is a case where an older movie might be better than a newer one. Do you prefer the older Mortal Kombat movie or the new Mortal Kombat movie?
I think I prefer that first. Is it the 1995 Mortal Kombat? Is that the year it came out, that original one?
Yeah, that seems about right.
And don't get me
94,
wrong, like,
94, 95.
it can be a little bit, cheesy in
Yeah,
places.
95.
Another cheap plug. Me and Johnny did do a review of that before as well. But I do enjoy it overall. I think they made a pretty decent stab at actually adapting the story from the video game and making it line up, at least on a
And the
baseline
practical
level,
effects
with
are
what
really good.
Yes, yeah, especially for the time.
And the
I
Goro,
was
the
actually
big
shocked.
Goro puppet man, it was cool.
I hadn't watched it in years, and then I rewatched it last year because we were doing the Boba Joe Show episode on it, and I couldn't
Then you're
believe
up all
just
night
how
with bloody pop music
expensive
after
it
listening to
was.
that.
Yeah, great soundtrack, phenomenal soundtrack, and yeah, a lot of
Can't
money
go to
pumped
sleep
into it. Like, it's a
after.
really impressive looking movie. There's
And
only one really bad special effect in it though. Scorpion's
Yeah,
rope
it's
thing
cheap.
looks
but that
pretty
was
terrible.
if I remember right, that whole thing in the woods was like a very last minute rush, last minute addition to the film, so they didn't have time to even really work on it.
And the
Yeah.
bit at the end where you see the Shao Kahn superimposed over the sky, that looked terrible.
But I forget which YouTuber did a little documentary on it, and like all the actors were like super into it. They put themselves through good training. They had good trainers, which was helpful. It's like people really tried to make a good film, and I think it, as cheesy as it can be, I think it still holds as a good film.
Yeah, it had really good production value, and I forget who was working, but as far as like your cinematography and all that and production design, they had like good quality people working on it.
Is that is it a Paul S.W. Anderson movie?
Yeah, he directed it, but the other folks doing whoever, because you can get like a reasonable director, but if you don't have a good cinematographer or someone their team, someone paired with them, you can end up with a crap movie. But like on production wise, it did like a decent quality film, regardless of what happens in the story and all that.
Mortal Kombat is something that's been, thrown at the wall so many times when they've tried to do
They've
these
done 4
screen
animated films now, like
Yes.
4, and they're actually all good.
And
I mean, sorry,
like
the
a
modern ones, not the
cartoon,
ones from the 90s, the recent
series.
ones that are all actually part of DC Time Warner. How you get Batman films animated films every few years, direct to DVD specials used to be before digital. That's what those Mortal Kombat ones are. It's some of the same people in production houses that made like the Batman and stuff like that.
Animation is king for a lot of these adaptations,
And it's super
when they're
gory.
video game properties.
Yeah.
Well, for something with like Mortal Kombat, it's the perfect medium.
Yeah, two animated properties come to mind. A good one and a not so good one. A good one, at least for me, I know it got mixed reviews, was the I can't remember the subtitle. It's a Dragon Quest movie, but it's completely original animation. I thought it had a really interesting story, and it was really fun to watch. Like, hey, what happens if you think your whole life you're the chosen one, and it turns out it's your kid? And you're watching this guy in this whole movie thinking like he's going to do something great, and then 2/3 in, he gets his butt kicked and his kid saves him, and then turns out, oh, my role in the story was to raise the chosen one. I was like, that's, that was a fun premise to play with. But then in terms of bad animation and early CGI, we could talk about FF, Final Fantasy, Advent Children.
Oh,
and
which one? The cinematic one, or which one?
Well, Advent Children was full CGI.
Oh yes, the one before that was the Spirits Within, wasn't that?
Spirits Within was
I saw
like
that one in the cinema.
Yeah, that was the one that
Donald
people
Sutherland
like.
doing one of the voices.
People had a lot of expectations for, and it didn't hold. But like Final Fantasy is not a world you can dive into as a film because it's.
Well, every game's different. So that's what people got annoyed. They thought they were going to see something from one of the games.
Yeah,
but they did the Final Fantasy game of just making an entirely different thing again.
But even with Advent Children, like it's one of those things where, you know what, I'm good with the original, the FF7 story. I really didn't need to go into what happens next because I think what happens next is kind of dumb.
It just felt like a bunch of video game cutscenes stitched together. It wasn't really a proper film, even though it's more of a technical showcase for Square again, which they love doing, showing fancy looking stuff.
Yeah, and it's kind of the Kingdom Heart effect of people can't put the script down. They keep writing story, and then they keep writing story, and they keep writing more. And it's like, okay, at some point you gotta stop. You're making this so convoluted. I can't follow what's happening.
Yeah, and then Sephiroth's hair wafts in the wind for 5 minutes in the anime style. It's like Edgelord 101.
So are there any video games that haven't been made into a property? I'm just looking at the background here, and I see like Ghost of Tsushima, BioShock.
Has Gears of War been made into a movie?
I thought they were talking about
this is all stuff that's been announced. Some exist and some's been announced.
Okay. It might be an Amazon type of
has
thing.
Been rumored for all my life. I feel
it's the same as like He-Man's been rumored for 20 years. It's like, we might be making a movie eventually, and then nothing happens.
Ghost of Tsushima would be fun.
Could potentially be good. Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, Gears of War 2.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of the Gears of War games. I mean, I like, they're fine, but again, it's a co-op thing. If you've got no one to play with them, it's not as fun.
Yeah.
But that would be a cool either TV or film. I could happily watch that.
Yeah. It'll be a dark film for sure, because it's like
brown. It's all brown. That was the style of the times. Everything's brown.
It's all brown, and if you're not the main character, you're dead. You're gonna die. Like, there's no hope.
BioShock has
everybody's shooting steroids non-stop in that game.
I think BioShock would be something that you could potentially bring to the big screen or the TV screen. The only thing is, it's a little bit like Resident Evil and those type of games where it's such an immersive experience where you learn a lot of the lore from just reading notes and reading files and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I just don't know how much you could actually translate over to the screen and still make it, accessible to the average viewer to still get
make it first person, give everyone motion sickness in the cinema.
Yeah.
Well, if they do a BioShock, are they going to keep it underwater? And are you going to see that, or are you just going to be in narrow hallways all the time?
Yeah, narrow hallway.
That's the big question.
Just a narrow hallways, and work experience kid can paint like a nice undersea background, maybe the Little Mermaid would be in there.
They might do better with BioShock. Was it BioShock 2? No, BioShock 3.
3 was in the sky or whatever,
with those
monorail looking things.
But yeah, I agree. BioShock has some potential there. What's the one that I'm covering? Oh, I see Death, so it must be Death Stranding.
Death Stranding.
Oh, please don't. Please don't. There's a game for that. We don't need. I don't know how you're going to do a movie.
You've already got an actor from bloody Walking Dead that Norman Reedus in the game, so you don't need to make a bloody movie.
It is a movie when you get done watching all of it, but then, and now the second game, but it's like, what? It's a postal delivery service at the end of the world, like. With
some made that movie.
Yeah. I don't know how they're going to make that a good movie.
I'm gonna throw it out there while the three of us are here together on screen, and I know we've privately discussed at some point doing a Starship Troopers show, so that's definitely still on the cards. But I think a good potential sequel to what we were talking about today, we could go it the other way. We could go good video game adaptations of movies and TV shows. It could be something to look at, because there was once a time where you couldn't almost release a movie without some type of video game tie-in to go along with it. So maybe someday in the future we could actually sit down and look at how that all worked out for certain properties.
Mark's just going to list all the Terminator games.
Pretty much, probably.
Oh,
there's lots of stuff there. There's lots of stuff we can talk about.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's even a subcategory for that of like games that are not directly tied to a movie, but were inspired by it. Because like there are some Starship Trooper games. There's an RTS. Yes. There's a base building one, but that also led directly to Helldivers, which is like, I love Helldivers. And so like video game or movies can influence video games in a lot of ways. There was one I was just talking about earlier, and I don't remember what it was.
There's another category, I guess. You got novels, because you got Dune was a film, like the David Lynch one, and then the modern ones. In the early 90s, they had those Dune PC game, but I don't know if it's based on the novels or not, or just has that name.
We were just talking, it just escaped my mind. The Japanese film with the kids beating up each other.
The Battle
Royale.
Yeah.
That, it took some time, but it kind of led to Hunger Games, and then led to an entire genre of video games that are popular for streamers, because you dive in and it's short, and then you can clip it and put it up on your YouTube channel and do it. You could do like 10 jumps and then put 10 videos up for like a whole week. But like Battle Royale inspired basically a whole video game genre.
Yeah, they've made so many games now that it's like partly ruined the actual video game industry, because companies are like, these things are making money, let's make more of them. But you can only have a finite amount of these games out at once, because there's only a limited possible maximum like user base in any time. So every time you make a new one, you're pilfering users from another one. So they can't all be profitable. So they're trying to crank out so many Battle Royale games.
Someone will probably ask us, like, well, you're talking about video games. What did you think of Ready Player One?
I hated it. I didn't know what it was. I walked into it just as another film to watch that week, and it was so boring. It's one of 3 experiences out of at least 500 movies I've seen at the cinema where I almost walked out halfway through, and I thought I'll just try and have a bit of a nap till the end and just see because I don't want to get up and walk out. I want to have a rest. It was so awful. I nearly hated every minute of it, and it should have been an easy win and really fun and cool. The idea of it was cool, but the execution, it was just a sloppy mess.
A real mixed bag for me, Ready Player One, because like on the one hand, it is a bit of fun to sit and watch it, and you see so many different properties referenced in it, and it's like, it's
the Shining video game, that was a classic.
Yeah, but all this, Back to the Future, there's so many different things, from your youth and from video games in general that are referenced, and that's pretty cool. And yeah, there's stuff about it that I definitely like, but yeah, overall, it was just okay. My younger nephews though enjoyed it, so I think that's probably a good sign, or at least a sign.
It's fine for kids. Fine for kids.
Yeah,
I'm such a bloody old nerd, because I started out playing Ataris and early Segas and Commodore 64s and Amigas and all this shit in the early 80s. When they got to the end of that movie, I already knew what was going to happen based on the Easter egg from Atari. I went, it's going to be the Easter egg from Atari, the most well-known fucking Easter egg in existence. I'm like, it's the Easter egg from the Atari adventure game or whatever. I'm like, really? You couldn't have changed the name or done something else? It was just so lazy.
I agree that the plot with the characters was the part that dragged it down. I had no investment in anyone on screen. There was
a good Aussie actor in there, but it was wasted.
Yeah, I was bored most of the time, except for when they made the
I was bored.
references.
I was really bored, and you're seeing all these pop culture characters, but they're just
When the
references. And then the
tonal,
end scene felt like one of the Bayhem Transformers movies, just stuff flying around everywhere, and you can't focus on anything. And
when there was a tonal shift in the movie too, because it's like I don't feel like any of these characters are in danger until the bad guy blows up the apartment with his family in it. It's like the tone just jumped.
Yeah,
there was a big Gundam at the end that looked cool, and apparently the Iron Giant was in there if you squint and look real hard, but I never even saw him in there.
See, that is based, I think, originally on a novel, and
it's like a short novel.
In the novel, I think there was no real issue, obviously, with copyright for the book, and apparently there was tons of stuff that was in the book that's not in the movie at all that they couldn't even touch because of copyright.
A lot of placeholders.
So,
they had the bloody Michael Bay Ninja Turtles in there, and it's like, oh, do I need to see them again?
And interesting, though. I might revisit it someday just to maybe look at it with a fresh pair of eyes and see if it's still.
And that'll be the last time I will talk. Dare you watch that? I'm never talking to you again.
Don't you dare! Don't you dare waste oxygen on that.
Just don't tell me about it. We're fine.
Oh, Johnny, can we do just a Boba Joe show dedicated to Ready Player One and how great it is?
As long as it's 5 hours and we live stream some sort of like fan-made video game version of the book of the movie.
Yeah. What Johnny's going to do is
a text adventure version.
Boba Hicks is going to talk, and Johnny's just going to have that Gonzo up in front of the camera, and he's going to go like eat lunch.
Gonzo, hey Gonzo.
On this tie, it's got hot chilies.
Johnny will just have like 40 minutes of random thoughts recorded, and he'll just hit play with the Gonzo in the front, and he'll just walk off. And once in a while, I'll be like, "Oh yeah, that thing happened."
I'll get a ticker going down the bottom. Yeah.
No, it's definitely been a great chat today. I've been really enjoying it. And I do think I know I mentioned about the movies, the video game one, but I am really genuinely looking forward to having a bit of a Starship Troopers chat sometime in the near future, because it's a property that's near and dear to my heart, I have to say, for many reasons. So definitely.
Who directed the first one? Was it Verhoeven? I can't remember.
It is Verhoeven, indeed.
They did all those like cheesy DVD sequels years later. I used to go to the rental store and I'd see all this like, what the hell? Up to number 3 now.
They were bad.
Yes, we'll have to cover them in intricate detail. Doesn't matter how bad.
I used to love going to the rental store and seeing all weird non-canon sequels to movies like a decade later. Like here's like, I don't know, Crank 10 or some nonsense like that.
But if we do the Starship one, I'll have to go in the closet and pull them out, because like only one toy line was ever made for that movie. And I have it. I don't have it complete because some of it's pricey, but the fact that Galoob is like, I'll do it. I'm sure kids will love this X-rated film toy-based license. And as an adult, I'm like, this is some of the coolest stuff. But as a kid, it's like my parents would never let me watch that movie or play with those toys.
I forget, that is fairly like violent in that. Like the guy in training, the guy gets shot and all that.
And gets cut off.
Yeah.
And
well, you know, if it's a Paul Verhoeven science fiction movie, you know it's going to be incredibly violent, because it's part of that trilogy of RoboCop, Total Recall, and then Starship Troopers, where the violence level just goes up and up and up. Yeah,
sometimes I've posted on a comment online to someone's like Facebook post or something where they're talking about something I don't really give a shit. I've got that screen cap where, you know, there's little video monitors in Starship Troopers with little like propaganda and all that. It has the guy going, "Would you like to know more?" with caption. I just like posted that so many times.
So good.
So if we're gonna wrap this up, how are you gonna end your game? Are you gonna do like the whole Mario freeze frame and go?
I'm gonna get my 99 lives is gonna roll over to 100, and then everything's gonna crash.
Yeah, mine's going to be really disappointing. It's literally just going to go black screen. You're going to get a game over, and then you're just going to have to quickly enter your initials before the screen changes again.
But Jesse's got the game genius. He's going to hack in and like reset it and start us off on like level 10 again.
See, I'm just gonna say that I finished, and then the picture of Ronald Reagan is gonna show up, and he's gonna say, "Let's go get a burger, dude."
Yeah,
I was
winners
hoping to be
don't do
writing a
drugs.
raptor like that meme.
I don't even remember what game that was.
I think at the start
Used
of
to
Street
have,
Fighter
like,
2,
ones-
it used to always say
I,
winners
I
don't
love
do
in
drugs.
the 80s arcades, it would have like the FBI thing, like winners don't do drugs, all those arcade games.
Well,
Oh,
they
this
were
is
right.
definitely a fun time. Thank you for inviting me on.
Thanks for spending
Well,
the time with us.
Thank you
and,
for
you know,
thank you for suggesting the
looking forward to
topic.
the
It was
next
an
one.
awesome, fun topic.
Yes.
My
Let
favorite
us
one
know,
was
folks.
probably the first Mortal Kombat.
Let the folks out there in internet land let us know what your favorite video game movies were, what your worst ones were. Yeah, unload
Would you
in the
get in a
comment
boxing
section.
match with Yui Bowl if he challenged you?
Would you marry the Princess of Persia? Yes, is my answer to
9
that
out of
question.
10 users voted yes.
The prince or the
All right,
princess?
folks,
Either one.
Google it.
They're all up for grabs.
All right.
I might have
All
to
right,
marry
folks.
Bob Hoskins.
Take care.